In the 5th year of my marriage to Elvis, the girl he had been keeping in a hotel was exposed, and the news spread far and wide. In order to spare her from the label of a mistress, Elvis came to me with a divorce agreement and said, "Tiffany's father once helped me. Before he passed away, he entrusted me to take good care of Tiffany. Now that this kind of thing has been exposed, I can't just ignore it." Over the years, Tiffany has always been Elvis's top priority. In my previous life, when I heard these words, I was so devastated that I made a scene and stubbornly refused to get a divorce. It wasn't until I suffered from severe depression, because of a single sentence from Tiffany, "Sister doesn't seem to be sick," Elvis concluded that I was faking my illness. He thought I was playing hard to get and framed me for having an affair, and he directly sued for divorce. Only then did I realize that I could never compare to the kindness of being recognized and supported. In despair, I committed suicide. When I opened my eyes again, I didn't hesitate to sign that divorce agreement. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Giselle, after this matter is over, shall we remarry? In the courtyard of the villa, when I was sitting on a stone bench in a daze, Elvis brought Tiffany in front of me. Just 3 hours ago, Tiffany was exposed by paparazzi as a suspected lover of Elvis. The whole internet was digging into her past, scolding her as the mistress who had intruded into the sweet love between me and Elvis. The homewrecker, Elvis's image as a loving husband collapsed, and the stock price of Group began to fluctuate. In my previous life, when Elvis came to me with the divorce agreement, I was so angry that I pulled out all the roses he had planted for me in the courtyard. I hysterically questioned him about his relationship with Tiffany. She was clearly just the daughter of his mentor, and there were countless ways to solve the problem. But he chose to sacrifice me, just because he didn't want Tiffany's depression to worsen. What Elvis didn't know was that during the time when the hot topic was fermenting, I was also diagnosed with moderate depression. "Giselle," Elvis called me again, pulling me back from my trance. I lowered my eyes and my gaze fell on the divorce agreement on the stone table. He knelt down on one knee at my feet, his deep eyes looking at me, and his burning palm wrapped around my hand. His tone was coaxing. "Giselle, just do it for my sake, okay? We'll announce to the public that our marriage has long been in name only and that we had the intention of getting a divorce a year ago, but we just hadn't found the right opportunity." I didn't speak for a long time. Behind him, Tiffany was wearing a white dress, with Elvis's coat draped over her shoulders. Her lips were pale, and her eyes were red. "Giselle, please help me, okay? My mother committed suicide due to cyberbullying and depression. I don't want to follow in my mother's footsteps. Sister, I'll kneel down for you. Please help me." As she finished speaking, just as she was about to bend down and kneel, Elvis quickly got up, supported her, and skillfully protected her in his arms. His face was ugly, and he scolded in a low voice, "What are you doing?" Tiffany was taken aback. Her voice was delicate and weak, and she had a sobbing tone. Then she lowered her tearful eyes. I just wanted to make sister feel better." Elvis's eyebrows immediately showed impatience. He looked at me, and the original tenderness completely faded away. "Giselle, I didn't come to discuss this with you. I've already decided on this matter. If you don't want to get a divorce, then don't blame me." I calmly raised my eyes to meet his gaze, and his subsequent words stopped abruptly. But I knew what he was going to say. He was going to say, "Giselle, you know my methods. I have countless ways to make you sign the agreement obediently. If it comes to a lawsuit for divorce, you can't possibly win against the lawyers of Group." These were his exact words in my previous life. Later, I was set up and sent to the beds of several male models, and the evidence of my affair was conclusive. Overnight, I became a woman who had an affair, and I endured a lot of public criticism, and he and Tiffany became the innocent victims. "I can sign, but you have to promise me one thing." After a long while, I said. Elvis raised his eyes and looked at me, then nodded in agreement. He handed me a pen, and after I took it, without any change in my expression. I signed my name on the divorce agreement. Aren't you going to take a look at the agreement? Elvis frowned and asked me. I smiled and said, no need. He almost left the marriage with nothing, giving me all of his family property, just for Tiffany, to repay the kindness of being recognized and supported. Find some time to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. Okay, I said. Elvis's hand holding the divorce agreement froze slightly. There was a hint of confusion in his eyes as he looked at me. But in the end, he didn't say anything. When they left, Tiffany turned back and looked at me with a sneer. Her thin lips moved soundlessly. You lost. I did lose. I lost my whole life. So now I don't want to lose anymore. After a while, my phone screen lit up. It was a message from Elvis. I'm sorry for making you feel wronged about today's matter, Giselle, after this matter is over, I'll give you a grand wedding banquet again, and we'll remarry, I can't just watch Tiffany's depression worsen. You can understand me, right? Looking at these words, I couldn't help but laugh, with tears in the corners of my eyes. It was the same in my previous life. In order to force me to divorce, Elvis asked his friends to come up with a plan and got himself drunk. But he forgot that his friends were also my friends. John earnestly advised Elvis not to sacrifice his marriage for Tiffany. At the same time, he mediated with me, asking me to try to understand Elvis, saying that Elvis was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. If it weren't for Tiffany's father recognizing Elvis's ability, investing in him, and helping him start his business back then, Elvis wouldn't be where he is today. At that time, I cried and retorted, Elvis could have clarified this matter in countless ways. Why does he have to get a divorce? John fell silent. He had asked Elvis, and Elvis's answer at that time was, someone has to be wronged. I can only wrong Giselle. She loves me and can understand me. Just because I loved him, I was sacrificed. There was no such reason. Fortunately, I still have a chance. Elvis always deals with matters related to Tiffany particularly quickly. He signed the divorce agreement with me during the day, and in the evening, he arranged a press conference and asked his assistant to invite me to attend and clarify the matter. Before I could speak, the assistant thought I was going to refuse, so he told me the words that Elvis had asked him to bring. He said, Miss Giselle, you should attend this press conference, even if it's not for Mr. Elvis. It's for your reputation. I was stunned for a second, and finally let out a sneer. Elvis was threatening me. He was trying to use the same methods he used against me in my previous life to force me to compromise, to smear me, and to let me struggle under public opinion. In the end, I would have no choice but to bow my head. I've always wondered whether Elvis saw me as his wife or as his enemy. Now that he wants to publicly clarify our relationship, I'm no exception. The press conference was held in the grand hall of the most luxurious hotel in New York, and the journalists invited were all the most influential ones in the industry. When Tiffany, wearing a cheongsam, holding Elvis's arm and appeared side by side, the journalists swarmed up immediately. Elvis instinctively protected Tiffany behind him and smiled as he blocked the microphones for her. Wait a moment. I'll answer your questions one by one. Please make way for now. Okay. His voice was gentle. When he raised his head, he happened to meet me, who was also surrounded by journalists. When our eyes met, I actually vaguely expected that Elvis would also come to my rescue. But the next second, he indifferently moved his gaze away. With a smile on his lips, he held Tiffany's hand and walked onto the stage as if he hadn't seen me. I sneered and curled the corners of my mouth. The journalist closest to me was probably an intern. She timidly handed me the microphone and asked, Miss Giselle, have you really divorced Mr. Elvis? Yes. I smiled and nodded in reply. The intern pushed her glasses and said, but you and Mr. Elvis met in high school, dated for 7 years, and have been married for 5 years. Mr. Elvis even spent a fortune to buy an island last month and named it after you. I was still smiling, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. That's what he owes me. It was a gift to make up for missing my birthday while taking care of the sick Tiffany. In my previous life, I was even complacent about this matter. Later, I found out that this idea was suggested by John. The island was chosen by Elvis's assistant, and he didn't even know where the island was. Do you still love Mr. Elvis now? She looked at me nervously, and the journalists surrounding me also fell silent. Even Elvis on the stage looked at me, his eyebrows furrowed slightly. I just looked at him calmly and then smiled and said, "No, I don't." I didn't stay until the end of the interview. After Elvis clarified that our marriage had been in name only for a year, I left the scene. Overnight, I became a second-hand item that Elvis didn't want, and Tiffany became the only innocent victim in this public opinion storm. The interview that day was pinned to the top of the social media platform for several days, and the topic's popularity didn't subside, especially the words Elvis said. Giselle and I had the intention of getting a divorce a year ago, but we just hadn't reached the right time. We originally wanted to handle this matter quietly, but now it has affected innocent people, so we have to publicly clarify. Miss Tiffany is not the homewrecker who caused the breakdown of our relationship. She is the only person my teacher cared about in this world. It's only natural that I take extra care of her. I hope everyone can view this matter rationally. Some fans were guided to say that the reason for the breakdown of my relationship with Elvis was that I couldn't tolerate any flaws. And I thought the pure brother-sister relationship between them and the so-called kindness in a dirty way. They also said that I was petty and not magnanimous enough. After being married for 5 years, I didn't learn the slightest bit of Elvis's loyalty and righteousness. The topic fermented for several days, and I became the target of public criticism. After getting the divorce certificate and coming out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Elvis called out to me, "Don't take the words on the internet to heart. Everyone will forget about it soon." I stopped in my tracks and couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. We were both being scolded on the social media platform. Why was there such a big difference? Giselle, the New Year's Day will be in 2 months, after the beginning of next year. Shall we remarry? He looked at me. Just as he was about to approach me, I took a step back and calmly shifted my gaze to the journalists who were blocked by bodyguards not far away. Elvis seemed to realize something was wrong and stopped in his tracks. "Elvis, I'm going back to Hong Kong City. You really haven't been back for a long time. It's good to go back. When the New Year's Day comes, I'll go and pick you up and bring you back." "I'm not coming back." I calmly interrupted Elvis's words. His faint smile froze on his face, and there was a hint of confusion in his eyes again. I added, "When I agreed to sign the divorce agreement, you promised me one thing. Now it's time for you to fulfill it." Elvis stared at me blankly. When I was first reborn, it only took me a few seconds to digest my love and hate for Elvis. At the moment I saw the divorce agreement, I thought about going crazy and tearing it up, and having another quarrel with him. But in the end, reason prevailed. After a long while, I smiled and said, "Elvis, I hope you will never appear in front of me again." When Giselle finished speaking with a smile and faded into the crowd, Elvis didn't react for a long time. For a moment, he felt an inexplicable sense of panic, as if he was about to lose the most important thing. Just like the day when Giselle calmly signed the divorce agreement, there was a faint unease in his heart. She didn't make a scene, as if she had already anticipated all the endings. But clearly, not long ago, Giselle was making a huge fuss because he forgot her birthday, and he even received a slap from Giselle. He originally thought that when he proposed a fake divorce, Giselle would go crazy and quarrel with him. He had even prepared to deal with it. But she didn't. She picked up the pen, and her expression was as calm as still water. At that moment, he had the idea of stopping Giselle, but in the end, he didn't do anything. He thought it didn't matter. Giselle loved him very much, and they were just having a fake divorce. He would make it up to her later. But Tiffany was different. She couldn't be hurt because of him. If it weren't for Tiffany's father taking a fancy to his talent, risking being kicked out of the shareholders' meeting by the shareholders, deciding to invest in his project, and guiding him to grow and become a new upstart in New York, he wouldn't have achieved what he had today. And he wouldn't be worthy of Tiffany either. Before Tiffany's father passed away, he hoped that Elvis would protect Tiffany and ensure her well-being. Elvis didn't want to be a person who broke his promise. John once asked him, if one day, Tiffany and Giselle both fell off a cliff at the same time, who would you save? At that time, he laughed and thought this question was too unprofessional. He would save Tiffany, but he would die with Giselle. John laughed with him, but he asked himself, what if Giselle doesn't want to die? Elvis, you can't always wrong Giselle just because she likes you. If she can't feel your love, she will also be desperate. That day, he didn't take it seriously. He didn't even keep these words in mind. Unexpectedly, in the end, these words came true. At night, Elvis still went back to the villa. Since getting married to him, Giselle had been living in the villa on the mountainside. She was an outstanding painter. At the age of 10, she was crowned as a teenage genius painter with a landscape painting that was beyond the ordinary. Everyone thought that her attainments in traditional Chinese painting were extraordinary and that she would become a leading figure in this industry. And indeed she did. However, after marriage, Giselle's painting style changed and was no longer the same as before. Giselle's teacher had tried to guide her with great care, but the effect wasn't significant. Later, Giselle gave up painting and even resisted picking up a paintbrush. Elvis walked into Giselle's studio. When he saw the landscape painting on the easel, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. With just a few strokes, it was vividly depicted. When Nanny saw the light in the studio turn on and came over to see Elvis, she was slightly surprised and said, "Sir." Elvis looked up. "When did Madam paint this?" Nanny replied, "The day you came back with Miss Tien." Elvis nodded, curving his lips as if to smile, but he couldn't manage it. After walking out of the studio, he returned to the room he shared with Giselle. Clearly, he had told himself countless times that his divorce from Giselle was just a fake one. As long as the storm passed, he would propose to Giselle again and give her a grand wedding banquet. But somehow, his heart always felt empty. Today, he took all of Giselle's words as just the ramblings of someone angry. There was a home in New York for Giselle and him. How could she not come back? Knock, knock. The door of the master bedroom was suddenly knocked on. Elvis, who was sitting at the end of the bed, looked up. It was Tiffany. She was wearing thin clothes. Her face was slightly flushed, and she stood at the door of the room, looking at Elvis quietly. "Why are you here?" Tiffany pursed her lips. "I was scared staying alone in the hotel, so I came to find you." "Is it?" As she spoke, she lowered her eyes. "Am I disturbing you?" Elvis frowned slightly, but still said, "It's okay. It's a bit late today. I'll ask Nanny to prepare a guest room for you. You can stay here for now." As he was about to call Nanny, Tiffany took a step and walked into the room. Her tender eyes, as soft as water, looked at Elvis. "Elvis, I don't want to stay in the guest room. Is that okay?" she said softly. Elvis frowned even deeper, and his thin lips opened and closed as if to refuse. But when he met her slightly red eyes, he softened his heart. "When the plane landed in Hong Kong City, Orville came to pick me up. When he was 18 years old, he was wrongly accused of sexual assault after saving a girl and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Because of his criminal record, no company was willing to hire him. I met him at an art exhibition. He never communicated with others and always kept his eyes down. When others approached him, he would only retreat timidly. Later, one night on my way home, I encountered some hooligans and was almost assaulted. He happened to pass by. I thought he would just watch indifferently. But no, he didn't hesitate for a moment. That day I asked him, "What if I also falsely accuse you?" He gave a bitter smile. "Then I'll just accept it." I used the power of my family to clear his name. On the day the truth came out, he stood in the distance, looking at me with red eyes across the crowd, and bent down to thank me. 3 years in prison didn't erase his kindness. My father also extended an olive branch to him because he had saved me and arranged for him to join the group. Starting from the grassroots level. Now, He has become my father's most capable assistant. Miss. Long time no see. Orville was wearing a windbreaker and casually took my suitcase. I nodded, and my nose inexplicably felt sour. 5 years ago, after I married Elvis, I accompanied him to the north. In my previous life, when something happened to me, he was being sent by my father to Country A for closed training. I never saw Orville again until I died. Miss, after coming back this time, will you leave again? He asked me. I said, no, I won't leave. Orville smiled. Mr. Jackson is very happy to know that you're back. Miss. Suddenly, I was stunned for a moment. My hand in my pocket involuntarily tightened, and a trace of bitterness welled up in my heart. At that time, the news of my divorce from Elvis was known to everyone. My father was afraid that I would be wronged and flew from Hong Kong City to New York overnight. He earnestly advised me, Elvis always doesn't think things through clearly. Back then, he would rather cooperate with that old man from Tiffany's family than accept your help. He said it nicely that he didn't want to rely on you. But to put it bluntly, isn't he relying on Tiffany's family's investment? Giselle, since you're divorced, it's over. Elvis isn't suitable for you. He wanted to take me back to Hong Kong City, but I refused. I cried and made a scene, insisting on staying. With tears in my eyes, I said, I love Elvis. I don't want a divorce. Why should I be sacrificed to fulfill his debt of gratitude? Even if he drives me to death, I will never divorce. I won't leave. In the end, my father was so angry that he had a heart attack and was sent to the ICU. He received several critical condition notices. Overnight, my mother's hair turned white. Later, when my father woke up, he didn't say anything, but I knew that he was disappointed in me. Before my mother left, she still tried to persuade me. Your father has never interfered with any of your decisions over the years, but Elvis isn't a good match for you. At that time, I didn't listen to anything and stubbornly insisted on going my own way. In the end, it cost me my life to realize that I wasn't that important to Elvis. Are they all okay? I asked Orville. Orville nodded. The group is developing well, and Mr. Jackson and Madam are both in good health. I smiled and met his cold eyes. Thank you, Orville. Thank you for fulfilling my filial duties on my behalf. Orville shook his head. He said that it was what he should do. If it weren't for my father and me helping him out back then, he might have died in some corner long ago. The trending topics on the social media platform kept emerging one after another. It started with Tiffany being Elvis's mistress, and now it has evolved into me being a heartless person. Yesterday, paparazzi took photos of me and Orville at the airport, and now they're saying that I had an affair long ago, which is why my relationship with Elvis broke down. I couldn't help but laugh. When I lowered my eyes, the screen of my phone showed a photo sent to me by Tiffany using a secondary account. It was a photo of her spending the night in the villa on the mountainside. Elvis took the initiative to let me stay overnight last night. What do you think Elvis will do tonight? Elvis is a person with a strong sense of responsibility. Now that the shackles are gone. Giselle, your husband is mine now. She was trying to provoke me, but my heart was already calm and unperturbed. Orville poured a cup of tea and handed it to me. He glanced worriedly at the screen of my phone and said in a deep voice, Miss, I will get back all the grievances you've suffered. I didn't answer his words. Instead, I asked, I heard that my father introduced many socialites and young ladies to you, intending to help you start a family. Why did you refuse? Orville seemed not to expect me to ask this question. He lowered his eyes and rubbed the rim of the teacup with his fingertips. After a long silence, I asked again, is it because of me? He suddenly looked up. When he met my gaze, he avoided it with a hint of guilt. Over the past 5 years, although I hadn't seen Orville, on every birthday of mine, there was always a generous gift from him. He spent a lot of money, and he would transfer money to my account from time to time, almost giving me all that he earned. I refused many times, but he was persistent. Later, I called him and lost my temper with him for the first time. I said, Orville, you saved me once, and I helped you once. We're even. It was my father who got you into the group, and you've reached where you are today relying on yourself. You don't owe me anything. I'm not your creditor. What you're doing will only ruin my marriage and make Elvis misunderstand the relationship between you and me. After that, Orville stopped transferring money to me, and he only gave gifts in moderation. Orville, I told you that you don't owe me anything. As soon as I finished speaking, Orville pursed his lips and said, "It's not that." What? He looked at me, slightly curving his lips with a faint smile on his face and love in his eyes. "I like you, miss. I know there's a huge gap between me and you. I've never expected you to look back at me. But my heart belongs to you. I don't want to deceive myself, and I don't want to delay others." When Orville finished speaking, I raised my eyes and quietly looked at him. He was the same age as me, but he was much more mature than me. When I first saw him, he was timid and out of place. Now, he has become the pillar of the group and the person my father values the most. Last night, when I returned to the old house, my father and I had a long talk, discussing the future of the group and my future. Finally, he asked me 2 questions. The first one was, "Do you still like Elvis?" I shook my head and gave a negative answer. But for the second question, I was silent. He asked me, "Are you willing to marry Orville?" My father has plans to retire. Although Orville has been with my father for many years, he's not from Jackson's family after all. I was a bit confused before, but now I have an answer. Orville, are you willing to marry me? 2 days later in New York, Elvis sat in the studio, looking down at the video of Giselle's interview with that intern the other day. The intern asked her curiously, "Do you still love Mr. Elvis now?" Giselle smiled and replied, "No, I don't." These simple 3 words made him feel inexplicably depressed. He played this clip countless times and tried to find something in Giselle's eyes. But in the end, he found nothing. He irritably opened the chat window with Giselle. But when he opened it, he found that the last message was the one where he reminded her to get the divorce certificate at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 o'clock. And she replied with a, "Okay." And then there was nothing more. In the past, Giselle liked to stick to him. She would share everything with him, big or small, and he would reply to her in a timely manner when he saw the messages. He scrolled through the chat records. Later, most of the time, Giselle was talking to herself. Occasionally, he would just reply with a, "Okay," or, "I know," when he had time. The work in the group was very busy. After Tiffany's father passed away, Tiffany suffered from depression and tried to commit suicide again and again. He simply couldn't take care of everything. Suddenly, John sent a message. "Giselle is going to marry Orville." Elvis stood up abruptly and accidentally knocked over the easel beside him. The landscape painting fell to the ground. When he was in a hurry to pick it up, a medical report was pressed under the easel. He was stunned for 2 seconds. When he finished reading all the contents, his fingertips trembled slightly. The patient has severe mood swings, repeatedly has suicidal thoughts, and has serious sleep disorders. After judgment, the patient has a tendency of moderate depression. The date at the end was the day he proposed a fake divorce to Giselle. Elvis, what happened? Tiffany heard the commotion and rushed from the master bedroom to the studio. When she saw the medical report in Elvis's hand, a calculating look flashed in her eyes. "Can I take a look at this medical report?" Tiffany asked in a low voice. Elvis didn't say anything, but his heart ached again and again. She took the medical report and after flipping through a few pages, she pretended to heave a sigh of relief, patted Elvis's shoulder, and comforted him. "Elvis, don't worry. Have you forgotten? I'm also a depression patient. You've seen how I am when I have an attack. I saw Sister that day. She was so healthy and didn't look sick at all. Sister might be too angry, so she used a fake medical report to deceive you." Tiffany looked at Elvis. Just as she was about to continue speaking, Elvis suppressed his emotions and took the medical report back from her hand. After walking 2 steps, he thought of something and turned back to say to her, "Don't stay in the master bedroom tomorrow. Giselle will make a scene again when she finds out." As soon as he finished speaking, Tiffany stood there in a daze. When she reacted and chased out, she said, "Elvis." But Elvis had already gone downstairs, in such a hurry that he didn't even take his coat. Whether the medical report was true or false, and whether Giselle was going to marry Orville or not, at this moment, his only thought was to see Giselle and take her home. Orville attached great importance to our wedding and supervised every detail personally. During the day, he ran between the company and the wedding venue. At night, he sat in the living room writing the invitations stroke by stroke. "Orville, you can just leave these things to the assistant to arrange. You're already tired from work, and there's no need to bother so much." I stood at the stairs holding a cup and said to Orville in the living room. He put down the pen, smiled at me, and said, "No matter what it is, I want to give you the best. Miss, I know that you might not have feelings for me in your heart, but you're the most important person to me." The moment I met his gaze, I was in a trance for a moment, and my heart moved for the first time in a long while. "Miss, you don't have to feel any burden. Just be a beautiful bride." Orville still smiled, and the emotions in his eyes as he looked at me were no longer hidden. In the end, I smiled and nodded. But I didn't expect that Elvis would find his way to Hong Kong City. Just as Orville and I came out after trying on the wedding dress, we saw Elvis standing under the camphor tree opposite. He was wearing a simple white shirt. His hair was messy. His face was slightly pale, and there was no light in his eyes. His gaze fell on the hands that Orville and I were holding together for a moment, and then he looked away. Elvis forced a smile and looked at me. "Giselle, I'm here to take you home. We don't have to wait until the beginning of next year. Let's go back and remarry now." "Okay." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a few steps towards us. Orville instinctively wanted to stand in front of me, but I stopped him. While adjusting his slightly crooked tie, I said softly, "You wait for me in the car first. I'll be back soon. Mom made your favorite food tonight. Let's go home together later." Orville looked down at me, the corners of his lips slightly raised, and he replied, "Okay." Finally, after giving Elvis a faint glance, he turned and walked towards the garage. At this time, only Elvis and I were left on the roadside. He instinctively wanted to get closer to me, but I quietly took a few steps back and said softly, "Mr. Elvis, we'd better keep some distance. Otherwise, if the paparazzi take photos later, there will be rumors on the social media platform that I'm deliberately pestering my ex-husband. No matter when it is, people are always particularly harsh on women. The incident with Tiffany is a good example. Clearly, it was Elvis who didn't think things through from beginning to end. But in the end, it was said that I wasn't magnanimous enough. Giselle, Elvis's eyes dimmed, and the bitter smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've already asked my assistant to deal with the matter on the platform. I'm sorry for making you feel wronged. I didn't know you had suffered so much distress. I didn't know, Elvis. You know it." I looked at him and said calmly, if he didn't know that public opinion could make people feel painful and depressed, he wouldn't have helped Tiffany at the cost of divorcing me. In my previous life, after I was framed for having affairs with several male models and was divorced from Elvis, I was completely disgraced. My career plummeted, and everyone was making fun of me. Some even came up to me and asked, "Giselle, after what your ex-husband has done to you, how can you still have the nerve to live?" If I were you, I would jump off the 18th floor. She used to be Mrs. Goo, but Elvis didn't care about her at all. Otherwise, how could he have pushed her to the brink like this? Later, I suffered from insomnia every night and sat by the French window looking at the lights of thousands of homes. I burned down the studio, and I also burned all the things that Elvis had given me, as if I could dig Elvis out of my heart in this way. I vented all my grievances about the unfairness. I hated why the young man who used to be full of me in his heart and eyes would push me to a dead end. In the end, I committed suicide by cutting my wrist. Even now, I still remember the feeling of the blood slowly draining from my body. Elvis opened his mouth to explain, But the words got stuck in his throat and he couldn't say them. In the end, he could only hang his head feebly. Giselle, I will make it up to you. I couldn't help but laugh. I had heard this sentence too many times. After Tiffany's father passed away, Elvis left on the night of his engagement banquet. He said, Giselle, something has happened to Tiffany, and I have to go and check on her. On the wedding day, Tiffany tried to commit suicide again. After he sent me back to the bridal chamber, he didn't come back all night. At that time, I wavered about whether to continue this relationship. But when I saw Elvis's tired appearance, I endured it. I loved Elvis, so I was willing to accompany him through all the hardships. Every time he broke an appointment, it would end up with the words, Giselle, I will make it up to you properly in the future. Elvis always thought that our lives were long, but he forgot that love would be consumed in the previous life. In the end, I couldn't tell whether I loved Elvis or it was just an obsession. After a while, I sneered and said, Elvis, actually, I've asked for so little, but you still couldn't take care of me. I was also a precious child doted on by my parents. Why should I let you trample on me like this? So, let it go. As soon as I finished speaking, I retracted my gaze. When I turned sideways and was about to leave, Elvis grabbed my arm in a panic. His tall figure almost stumbled and fell, and his pale thin lips opened and closed. I don't agree. It can't just end like this. Giselle, you are my wife, and you can't leave me. His voice trembled at the end. I laughed, pulled my hand back, and said, we are already divorced. Elvis, you forced me to sign the divorce agreement, threatened me to attend the press conference to clarify,